of the world. So, hi, howdy. That's what I'm supposed to say in College Station. I'm Bala Shetty, professor of information operations management at Texas A&M. I'm also the vice president for membership at Production Operations Management Society. I appreciate all of you being here, especially my distinguished panel. I'll introduce them in just a minute. We have, this is Rakesh and my brainchild about 5 years ago. During COVID, we wanted to have something for our doctoral students who are in the market, some kind of service to them. They're going to be our colleagues. This is their organization, so we decided we'll do at least some career-related stuff during COVID. That was very, very successful, so that we continued. This is our 5th year. I want to thank Rakesh, my partner. I couldn't have done this without him. We collaborated on this for the last 5 years. I appreciate POMS supporting this. One of the challenges we have in this POMS is that our conference is in April or May. So that doesn't really, lend itself to help the graduates with some career-related activities. So this has served that purpose. So I'm very pleased that it worked well for all of us. So let me introduce, this is very informal, and I told the panel there are no questions. I ask questions. Panel can chime in anytime. I will direct the question to one of the panel members and rotate, but you can chime in anytime you like. Participants can put questions on a chat. One of us will respond to it. I mean, colleagues and my panel members will respond to it as well. So feel free, and we'll see how that evolves. But let me introduce my distinguished panel. First of all, I appreciate you taking the time to be here on a Friday afternoon, especially Karen. This is our first week in ASU. Thank you so much. We have with us Dr. Arvind Chandrasekaran. He's a distinguished professor in operations and business analytics at Ohio State University. He's also a senior associate dean for faculty and research. He previously served as associate dean for graduate programs, responsible for Ohio State MBA programs. Dr. Chandrasekaran received his PhD from University of Minnesota. Published extensively in our best journals in production operations management, supply chain management, as well as management science. He currently serves as the department editor for JOM and a senior editor of production operations management. So please join me welcoming Professor Chandrasekaran. Our next panel member, Professor Karen Donahue from now at Arizona State University. She previously held faculty position at University of Minnesota as Curtis L. Carlson Endowed Chair in Supply Chain Management. Before that, she served on the faculty at the Wharton School for several years. She received her PhD in Industrial Engineering and Management Science from Northwestern University. She has a long list of editorial responsibilities: senior editor for MSOM, associate editor for operations research, associate editor for management science, and department editor for production operations management. Of course, Dr. Donahue is also an eminent scholar. She published extensively, very premium journals in our field. Thank you, Professor Donahue. Please join me. Welcome, Professor Donahue. Last but not the least, Professor Van from Johns Hopkins University. He's a professor of operations management and business analytics. Received his PhD from Columbia. He served as a research scientist for a number of years at HP. Was it in Houston or somewhere else?
Palo Alto.
Oh, Palo Alto, okay. He's a senior editor of production operations management. And of course, he also published extensively in MSOM and management science. All three colleagues are eminent scholars. They held administrative roles, and of course, they have outstanding teachers. So I think we are for a treat today. So what I would like to do first, just to start a conversation piece. So the focus today is how to present your case. So as you know, my panel members know, so you know that we have 3 sessions with different teams, different focus. So today's focus is how best to put your foot forward. How do you present a case? So I'm going to start with the. And I think also it's important for the PhDs know the process as well, kind of get some understanding of, because every school has kind of different processes. So it would be important to understand what the process typically look like. So I want to ask you, Professor Donahue, I ask Karen first, if you've been to, this is your 4th school, Northwestern, Minnesota, Wharton, and now ASU. Give us a sense of the process that you have encountered in terms of faculty search.
Yeah, so many of you, I understand, this is the year that you're going on the market, so you probably have had some exposure to what's ahead of you, but maybe to highlight, broadly what happens and then index into a couple things. So this is the time that you should be putting together your materials. So the process involves submitting materials to the various schools that you're interested in applying to, which usually includes a research statement, a vita, a teaching statement, and depending on the school, there may be some other types of statements that they ask for. And so putting those things together now is, if you haven't already, now is the time to do that. And I think the more you can get examples from others that have been successful, the better. And that includes not only those in your university, but other people that you have networked with, other PhD students or junior faculty that you've networked with, to get some idea of those materials, and then, submitting them and so on. So, but I wanted to say, I guess, because I'll let some others maybe talk more about other parts of the process, but, getting those materials together is really important. I think another thing at this point in time is really making it easy for those around you. For instance, other faculty in your department that aren't on your committee to speak for you. So the more you can really package who you are, what you're doing, what types of research you're doing, what your superpowers are, you can package that in a way that's easy for others to speak to, the better. Because often at conferences or, phone calls, people will call up other people in your department and ask, what do you think of this student? And it's really helpful if that faculty, can very quickly articulate who you are, why, what it is you're doing. And so I think that's something that to be able to really package that so people can speak in your absence. And that goes beyond even your faculty, all the people you meet at the various conferences you're going to go to, even if you're not a good fit for their school, people are networking across schools, and to be able to say, hey, this candidate is doing this, has these kinds of skills, making that, again, making it easier for people to speak in your absence, to have sort of a brand that you have cultivated. So I'll maybe leave it at that to let others, or do you want me to go further?
No, Karen, I'll come back to you. I have more questions for you and the panel, of different phases of this, journey for them, at least the initial phase of the journey. Arvind, what does it look like at Ohio State? Arvind, you've been there for a while.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here, and good to see everyone here. Yeah, it's very similar to what Karen was saying about it. And a couple of things, I think she hit on a couple of very important points that I want to again, reemphasize and tell you why it's important. I think she mentioned about socializing your CV, research statement, teaching statement. Some schools ask for diversity statement, some schools don't, but you've got to be prepared to talk about diversity and a variety of ideas, not just diversity on one sect. But I'll tell you, going back to what Karen was saying, it's absolutely important for not just your committee members, but I will tell you, the people who I call them as junior faculty in your units, because they actually are, again, they've gone through this process very recently. So they know a lot about, again, what's happening there, what happened for them last year, and so on and so forth. I would highly recommend you all to talk to your junior faculty, and maybe they are not in your committee, but that's perfectly okay. they will go to conferences. They'll go to more conferences than senior faculty, and they'll socialize more than the senior faculty because that's what they want to do to get them established. So there is going to be a lot of, I would say, knowledge transfer between them and the other junior faculty in the school that you're looking for. So I would say that that's very important, that what Karen says is absolutely important. I'll just add a couple of things about what we do at Ohio State, and then maybe I'll pass it on to Rujan. So one thing is, again, very similar to everybody. We typically go through this process where there's a search committee that is formed. And usually the search committee involves a couple of senior faculty, but we also encourage junior faculty to be in the part of the search committee. And we usually review applications and all. I'll tell you, a lot of times people think the job market starts in September, but I will actually argue the job market starts like 3 years before you are in the job market. And particularly, a job market really starts in the POMS of the previous year. I would say that because the POMS of the previous year is when you see people who are getting ready for the next year's market. That's when we start looking at it, like saying, okay, we might have a job because there's a lot of uncertainty in, okay, who's going to hire next year. But it's very good for you to think along those lines, that it's not just the September, but it's before that. So we, again, as we think about our faculty, we start socializing with like prospective PhD student applicants, even as early as the POMS of the previous year. But then we typically meet them in conferences, so Informs being one. We also go to DSI. But nowadays, after COVID, there's a lot of influence on Zoom. So we talk a lot about having meetings through Zoom. And then, of course, it's very democratic here that everybody is involved. I know it's not the same across various schools, but and then this search committee presents the top 4 or 5 candidates that they thought came up to the top based on these conference interviews, and then they come for a job talk. So it's a very similar process to, I'm assuming, a lot of schools. But the only thing I'll add to you is it starts very early. It's not like, again, starting in September is important. So if there are some people in the call who are in their 4th year and thinking about a 5th year PhD, I would highly recommend that you start your journey right now, because again, nothing is too late for you, because you've got to start this. And that way you try to talk to more people. I think one thing I've realized as a people is I love talking to people when I come to conferences, when people introduce themselves. It's so fun. I mean, because we've gone through that process. I can tell you everybody is like that. So I know we're all introverts in some way, but be out there to talk about what you're doing. It's always something that we remember. I'll turn it over to Rujan so he can talk some more.
Yeah, Rujan, what does the process look like at Johns Hopkins?
All right. Thank you very much, Bella, for organizing this very wonderful workshop series. This is extremely useful for our PhD students and the future faculty members. In addition to Karen and Arvid just mentioned, I want to emphasize the two small bullets. When our students prepare the dossier, we have the CV, the research statement, the teaching statement, and also some representative papers. I want to say, the cover letter is also very important. It's very short, just 1 page. I want to remind our students, try to show, the cover letter is customized. It's just 1 page, show you, at least the school. And the school, you are interested to the school, and it's a good match. And in addition to your job market paper, probably you may want to have 1 or 2 sentences to summarize your work at a very high level. Show your work is interesting and is useful. That's the cover letter. If you have some personal information, location preference or something else, you may want to mention it in the cover letter. We do look at the cover letter first. Another thing is the website. Website can share more information. And in addition to list the papers, and I would say for each paper, especially the most important ones, give a high-level summary, show what you are doing and what's the impact, and people may be interested in your work, because we review many applications every year, more than like 200. We don't have time to read your paper in detail, but we do want to know what they are doing. So prepare a personal website. you may want to show some personal information to show, you are an interesting person. People want to get along with you.
So Rukshan just shared some about how to present, but I want to be a bit more specific on what is an ideal resume for a PhD? I mean, what are you looking for? What would and I'll give you an example. I chaired our search last year here, and we had 189 applications for one position, right? And so that means everybody's going to spend 10 minutes, 3 minutes looking at your resume. So I think it's important that you make that resume very appealing to people so I want some insights. I'm going to start with Arvind. Arvind, what does an ideal resume look like, both in terms of content and length? What to include, what not to include, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things, right? I mean, like we all know that the best ideal resume is a resume that has like 3 published papers, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And we know that, and we all know that that's not always possible or never, very seldom possible, right? So a good resume is something where it conveys a couple of things. One is, when you go to the market, are you like, again, ready to actually go and like start working in another university with like some papers that are under review? So one thing I always look out for is more than, yes, obviously a published paper there is going to convey a lot of meaning because it's very important for the people to realize that you have the ability to publish in top tier journals. So I would say, yeah, that always comes first. But let's say I know a lot of us are not that lucky, including myself. When I went to the market, I didn't have a published A paper. But what you want to do is, again, make sure you have very high quality work in high quality journals that are actually under review. So I look at it as, again, do you have 2 or 3 papers that are not just working papers, but are the papers that are under review? And if they are under review, are they in the advanced round reviews? Again, that communicates a very important message for me. So that's one thing I look for. I also look for the connection between papers. Again, like it's very easy for you to think about like 3 papers under review, but one in healthcare ops, one in supply chain, and one in sustainability. That doesn't communicate your focus as a scholar. So how much of those papers are very well connected to each other? And the people that are evaluating your resume, like Bala, are very smart. In 20 seconds, they can see a resume and tell, okay, these people are just doing independent research versus this people is the data or the idea is given by somebody else. And that's why you see a incoherent stream. So it's very important for you to have connected research papers that are under review. So that's one thing I'll tell you right off the bat, that puts, again, the way we see this is, again, we receive the same number of submissions. So when you come from 180, if you go to like 50 or 60, those 50 or 60 are having those kind of themes in it, right? The other thing that you asked for, Bala, I'll be very quick, and I want to hear other thoughts as well. Okay, what is the size of a resume? Again, that really, again, you definitely don't want a 7-8 page resume. I mean, like that, meaning like you don't want to put a lot of information that are spurious information. So rather than saying the number of pages, I would definitely say that your resume should include like a little bit of information about your current research stream and your working research stream that you're working on. Your resume should include something about your presentations that you made, not just in academia. A lot of you, I know, have also presented to community, to practice, to industry. So some of those themes should be there. And your resume should include something about your teaching. At the end of the day, again, like let's not forget that's a very important job. I know research is a winner, but teaching has to be there. So what kind of classes have you taught? Have you TA'd in other classes that gives you a breadth of experience as an instructor? So some aspects of that teaching. So, and then of course, referees and references and all are there. So if you can package all this information in 2 pages that are like succinct, go for it. But usually I've seen like a 2 to 3 pages as a standard norm for a starting resume. But I'll let Karen and Ruzian comment on it too.
Karen, something to add in terms of how best to present your case on a CV? What should go in there, what should not go in there, and how would we make it a bit more appealing to people who have only 3 minutes to review it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So first I want to say I forgot to thank you, Bala and Rakesh, for putting this together and just having this opportunity to speak to all these world-class PhD students on the market. I think for us, faculty in different universities that may be hiring, this is also a great opportunity for us to be able to connect with the PhD students. So thank you so much for this platform. Yeah, I mean, Arvid did a great job kind of laying this out. Maybe just to pick off a couple things. I mean, I think you think about a resume as you're very quickly getting some information, right? And so at that point, you're using this as maybe a go, no go, or, look deeper. And so having clear evidence of research, productivity, impact, and also focus is important, as well as evidence of teaching ability. I think those are the two things you quickly are trying to screen out or in as you're looking at these resumes. And so organizing your information so that you're giving the best shot at really featuring your research productivity and impact. And that may be, one of it, as it was already articulated, is having, some consistency. You can have more impact when things kind of fit together rather than a kind of all over the place. And so thinking even about the word choices you're using as you're sort of thinking about, packaging this. And with research productivity and impact, I think also keeping in your resume some of the work that you did before you were a PhD student, especially those that have had some industry experience and other meaningful experience that help to, get you to where you are in terms of your research focus and so on. Having that sprinkled in there, I think, is important as well and can really help to differentiate you. Similar with teaching ability, thinking broadly about how am I going to provide evidence that I'm going to be a strong teacher. I mean, some of that is coming out through even the range of presentations that you've done outside of academia, as Arvid mentioned. That helps to understand, like, this is someone that can speak to multiple audiences, and that can help in thinking that they can maybe be successful in an MBA classroom. So I think thinking about those two aspects, research and teaching, and how is the resume speaking to those. And then I love that, the website was called out, because I think, unlike when I was on the market, you guys have a whole, infrastructure of websites where you can put a lot of more information. So using that as a way to give people more information. The last thing I'll say is make sure you're consistent across documents, because I know this happens a lot where someone will have some description of a paper in their research document and even say that it's, been submitted to X journal. And then in their CV, it's maybe a different title for that paper and perhaps a different journal is mentioned. These happen actually quite a bit. And part of it, I think, is that just, one document gets updated more often than the other. Make sure if you're sending all of those to a school, make sure at that point in time, everything's consistent, because that's often a red flag too, like, what's actually going on here if they're saying different things. So make sure you're consistent across your web page, your CV, and any other documents that you send.
Thanks, Karen. Ruxin, you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure, of course. According to my personal experience, I chaired and co-chaired surgery committee a couple of times at the Johns Hopkins Caribbean School. And research comes first. If the dean's office doesn't say anything, which area you should hire, we conduct open research. Personally, I like something new, like a novel, like an emerging research topic or new methodology. I suggest, when the candidate prepares their dossier, prepares their CV, show the research interest, show what they have done, like the published papers if they have, submitted papers on review, on revision, work in progress. We want to have some candidate who have deep understanding about their research, in addition to the broad interest. Because later on the candidate may want to do follow-up research, lead a research project or lead a research team, to conduct, a set of papers that could come up in the near future. I think what I try to say, should you know what you are doing. You can do research independently. At the same time, you are a good team member. You are a good, team player. People like to work with you and show your what you are good at, and be consistent. And in terms of research output and research interest, what you are doing, what you have done, and what you plan to do in the future. That's the research. Another thing is teaching. We want to find someone who is very effective in the classroom, especially for teaching MBA full-time and part-time. Show the evidence you are already or you will be an effective instructor in the classroom. That's the 2 point I want to end.
Thank you. So I want to talk about references, right? Some schools require references up front. Some schools require they wait until you're being selected to come to campus, and so the practice kind of varies from school to school. So how do candidates address this? Should they just send voluntarily along with the dossier, the references? That's my first question. Second question, how best to pick the references to serve their candidates well? So if you can shed some light on the references to include or not include, and also, and the one more thing I want to mention that when I did I have done a number of these over at Texas A&M, but I had a lot of letters from the advisors. Right, so just if you had 189 applications, you got a lot of letters directly come to you as a chair of the search or the committee members. Is it a good idea to have your thesis advisors send a letter introducing you as a candidate and kind of talk about it? Is it a good idea? If you get 189 of those, that could end up being a little annoying for people who are doing this. So I think what should be the strategy there in terms of having your dissertation advisor or a senior colleague write a letter on your behalf even before the process actually you're being interviewed? Yeah. Karen, you want to take that first?
Sure. So letters of references are very important. And as students, it's important to identify who your references will be early on and give them a heads up about the timing so that they have time to write you a good letter. And I would say that some universities will not move forward on the process until they have the letters. As Bala mentioned, many are waiting until they have already screened you for interview to ask, but others are not. And so I think as you apply, it's important to be keeping track of what the rules are for different universities, and to be proactive in telling your references to what the timing is. I know for myself, I really appreciate students that, will give a heads up, like, in the next month, here's the dates that these things need to be sent out. And knowing that ahead of time is really important because, you don't want to be the faculty member that's holding things up. So being respectful of your committee's or your references time and helping them to be supporting you, I think is the first thing. So in terms of being proactive about sending the letters, I guess I don't have a strong feeling, and maybe I'm curious what others think about this, whether that tips the scales if someone is sending letters without being asked or not. But I do think more pointed emails from an advisor can help in some cases. And I know, I guess for myself, that I appreciate sometimes knowing that someone's, student is on the market. If it's someone that I, know has produced students in the past that might fit one of the, areas that we're trying to hire into. So getting some information from the advisor through a letter to say, hey, this student is now in the market and here's some things about them. I think that can be certainly a value add. So to the extent that your advisor is willing to do that. And I think it works best if advisor's doing a personal email to someone that they know or someone they, a school that they know that might be a good fit and not just doing a shot of, 100 emails to every school. So I think some of those personal connections can be beneficial. Again, it's not necessary. So if you don't have an advisor that's networked or feels comfortable doing that, I wouldn't say that you're in any way going to be, left behind. But I think it can be helpful, I would say, on the margin. And I'm curious what others think about that and letters in general.
I'll ask Arvind, but I want to ask participants if you have any questions, feel free to put on the chat. One of us will respond to you. But any doubts, this is, you're new to some of this conversation. So just let us know how we can address some of those issues. Just put it on chat. We'll respond to it. But Arvind, going back to you, letters of references, a nice introduction from the advisor, pros and cons, yeah?
Yeah. So let me ask you, Bala, how many of those 189 letters do you remember now?
A few.
So there you go, right? I mean, like it's like that. There is your answer right there for everybody. I mean, he has been in a search committee where people have written. So it's very hard for everybody to understand and like again remember every student. So I go back to Karen's point again. Like yes, there are some schools where letters are absolutely required for you to like complete the application. So you better do that. I mean, my advice to you is get it early. Talk to your advisor, your committee members, so you have that early so that your application is considered. There are schools where they'll only ask you letters when you fly out, or even after you fly out, they will ask you only when they get the job. So again, you can wait on that. My only thing, going back to what Karen said, I completely agree with her about the emails. And even that emails, right? Like I've had 5 students in the past, and I tell my students, again, don't tell me to email like 80 schools. There's absolutely no way. I mean, I might know people in 80 schools, but there is no meaning of that. Tell me what are the 5 to 10 schools that you are absolutely interested in going, because there is a lot of social capital there. That's the reason why I'm saying this, because your advisor is putting a lot of social capital in recommending you personally outside the system, writing a few anecdotes about why it's important and all. You don't want to burn that bridge. You don't want your advisor to recommend you for 80 schools and then you're not going to those 80 schools. So I would tell my students, give me those 5 to 10 schools that you're absolutely willing to go and you want to go there. And if they offer you a job, because keep in mind, job market is a two-way street. Yes, you want to have a job. I completely agree with you, but you want to have the right job. You don't want to go to a school where it's not a good fit for you. So that's why I asked the candidates this question. Give me 10 schools that you think you're absolutely gaga about it, that you want me to write a letter. And often cases, like as Karen says, I know somebody or I know somebody there, I've met them in conferences. Even if not, a letter from your advisor with something personal, not just saying, yes, he or she is the best student, but something more anecdotally personal as an email to those 10 to 12 schools would carry a lot. I think on the margins, it makes a lot of difference. So I would definitely recommend what Karen said in terms of practicing that email, but I would also recommend don't do it for 80 schools. Ask yourself the question, where are those 10 to 12 schools that you want to go, and have your advisor write for those schools, and definitely it'll be a good decision for you.
Any thoughts on that, Ruxit?
Yeah, of course. I think many schools use online system, like we are using Folio. You may use a different system, a different website. Like Carrie and Ari just said, remind your letter writers about the time. Make sure they submit the letter before the deadline. because the system always reminds, this application is incomplete. But personally, for incomplete application, I still review them, but some people may not. So pay attention to the deadline. For the personal email, I would say, like we just discussed, the job market, the faculty hiring is a two-sided market. Don't ask your advisor to write too many personal emails, and don't oversell, and at the same time, don't undersell. Some school may think this candidate is too good for us. So have a good understanding about the market, have a good match. Show you are really, really interested in that school, and you think it's a good match. And then if you have personal connection, you may want to pursue that. Otherwise, I would say don't do too much.
So, Karen, I have a couple of questions on chat. Someone want to take that up, Karen? Or Akshan, you have somebody asked, a full-time experience, is it worth discussing this with anyone anywhere in your application? If so, to what extent? Rukshan was probably because he worked for HP for many years before being a faculty. Do you want to take that up, Rukshan?
Oh yeah, sure, of course. I would say industry work experience is a big plus for the faculty member in the business school. But from my personal experience, don't stay in the industry for too long if you plan to come back. Because if you stay there too long, you lose connection. And industries that have different, expectation about us. Even for my personal experience, I was research scientist in HP lab. At that time, it was a research center for a company, but still part of the company. So everyone got to contribute to the company revenue. So we did applied research. It was good. It's like an internal consulting job. I like what I did. I worked as a full-time research scientist like 1.5 years, not too long. Otherwise, probably I wouldn't be able to come back. So I would say, industry experience is good for us, especially for teaching MBS full-time, part-time, and also it's a good experience. Can help us to find a useful research topic because we want to do useful research that can potentially make an impact on the practice. I would say it is a plus. But do keep this in mind if you want to come back. Still, research should be one of the components in your industry job. And still remember, you are interested in research, you are interested in academia. I would say 1 year postdoc, probably a summer intern once or twice would be good enough.
Karen, maybe I have a question on chat. Thank you so much for this session. How important is methodological contribution or methodological diversity when entering the job market? So would you take that up, please?
Sure. So I think it is important to be able to articulate why you're using a certain methodology and that you're, well trained and rigorous in that methodology or multiple methodologies. Certainly, I think we're in a place in our profession where multiple methodologies are valued for sure. So if that is something that you've been able to be trained in both analytical and experimental and empirical, or some subset of that, I think that's something definitely that I would make clear in your resume and in your discussions with people and in how you talk about your research. I will say that I think students that are inside a university that has a little bit more maybe gravity towards one methodology. So if you're in a university that has a little more of an analytical bent, or if you're in another university that's more of an empirical bent. I think it's important to realize that when you go out and talk to others, they're not necessarily from that same bent. And so I think it's always a winning strategy to make very clear why you're using the methodology that you're using to solve the problems that you want to solve. And so I think, this shows up in the way you talk about your research. It shows up certainly in your presentation, to not just go ahead and start, presenting an analytical model, or go ahead and just start, talking about the data that you collected, but to take a moment and say, because of this research question, it was important for this, to delve into this from this perspective, and this is why I'm using this methodology. I think that also helps as you interview with maybe schools that are, just the compilation of faculty may have slightly different backgrounds, and you may be coming in with, maybe you're the first person, for instance, that has done experimental research, no one else has done that there. So they may be interested in you because of that, but that doesn't mean they necessarily 100% understand how that methodology is going to contribute to the greater, infrastructure of their research program. And so being able to talk to, again, why this methodology works well for the kind of question that you're looking at, but then also thinking about bridging your expertise to others, I think is also really critical. And I think that's actually something that should be exciting for you, as you think about different departments. If it is a department that's, for instance, more empirical and you're more analytical, thinking through this is an opportunity for me to learn and to partner with some people with other methodologies. So I guess going back to your question, I think methodological contribution is super important. I mean, at the end of the day, we're hiring people that are super well trained, probably know the latest techniques, even more so than, senior faculty like myself. So we're leaning on, junior people to be very well trained and to be, superstars in methodology. So I think making that clear, and then diversity, I say, is good. Diversity is good, and being able to speak to what diversity brings and what a methodology brings to a research question.
Thank you again. Arvind, I saw the next question. I'm going to count on you to answer that. This next one, you see that, right? Should we
about the INFOMS conference, right?
Yeah.
Happy to share again.
How important is it?
I mean, I would tell you, it's a very critical part of the job market is to go to a conference. So I mean, absolutely, that's where it's not just you meeting the faculty in schools, but you're also meeting with other PhD students, candidates. So I would highly encourage you to think about going there. But I completely understand, I'm sure you may have some visa restrictions, you may have some reasons why you're not able to do, and I completely empathize that. So my answer to that would be I would email the school that you're actually applying for and explain to them the situation, why you're not going to the conference. And it could be and this happens very frequently, where again, your visa is not denied for some reasons that are not under your control, and you're unable to come to the US for that conference. They understand. So we have done, again, I was just reflecting on a couple of instances where I served as a chair for my committee when we interviewed. We've got a few instances when there were some students who couldn't make it to the conference, and we were able to give them separate, we thought they were really good. We ended up having separate Zoom interviews with them and all. So my recommendation for you would be to talk to the school, tell them why you're not able to attend the conference. There is kind of an implicit expectation that students are going to these conferences, especially in the job market here. But I completely understand if you have some constraints, you can talk to the school, and those schools will make additional ways of incorporating your interviews into the process.
I just want a couple of informational items for our participants. Production operations, if you're not a member of Production Operations Society, please join. It is free for PhD students. The return is enormous in terms of your career, how you build relationship, going to conferences. It doesn't cost you anything. So I would encourage you to be a member of production operations management. So I go to Informs, I go to production operations management. I sometimes go to MSOM if it's in a good city. So it's all, it's just, it adds so much to who we are as scholars. So I encourage you to do that. And also you can post your resume on POMS for free. It doesn't cost you anything. Schools can post their resumes on POMS website. I think we charge them like $100, something like that. Very, very minimal for schools. But for PhD students, it doesn't cost anything. So you can certainly post. A lot of us look at those postings, actually. A lot of us look at the POMS job posting. Informs has a very, very good streamlined job placement services. I know because I served a job placement twice for Informs, and that's like they're a bunch of professionals. In POMS, we're all volunteers, but Informs, you get a lot of support, and they do a fantastic job. So make sure that you go to their site and take advantage of that. That's how you make find out where the jobs are. So there's another question. The next question. If you're doing nonprofit operations, could it be useful to share previous nonprofit organization experience in your resume? Some Gabriel from University of Pittsburgh. Karen, do you want to take that, Karen?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes to similar to
The work experience,
any type of prior experience. I think prior experience and being able to connect that to the research that you're interested in, I mean, that's for sure something you should do. So I think that's definitely something that I would encourage you, Gabrielle, to do.
Yeah,
I wanted to actually, I don't know, I was an engineering IE student, so the next question actually spoke to me a little bit. If I could
absolutely. I
jump
was
into
going to
that.
ask you because I know you are an engineering student at Northwestern, so that would be the right question for you to answer, Karen.
Yeah, so I have a big place in my heart for industrial engineering students, given that's what I was doing at Northwestern. And it was 100 years ago that I was on the job market as a rookie. So some of this is maybe old news, but I would say if you're an engineering student, I don't know, where you are in the trajectory, if you're like on the job market right now, but if you have some time. So one of the things I did when I was a engineering student is I spent one summer, I reached out to Loyola University in Chicago because I was at Northwestern and their business school, and I taught an intro to OM summer class because I knew that it was, one of the things for business schools was, is this person going to be able to teach? Are they, do they understand business school teaching? And so I looked for an opportunity to show that I could teach in a business school. So I would say, and I know some engineering schools have deep connections with their business schools at their university. And so that could be a place to maybe teach. But again, I don't think a lot of people have done that, but I just want to throw that out as kind of a out of the box idea to, you need to be thinking about like, how am I going to show that I know the discipline of a business student so that I can teach and be successful in that school. And you can also do that with the types of industry contacts you have or other things that we've been talking about that help to really position yourself as a strong teacher. But I think that's one of the things that you have to get over from going from engineering to business. I think the other is the orientation of your research. And, there's many people that are inside an industrial engineering department that are, publishing the same journals, and their advisors are, mixing with the same people that are going to business school. So that's a real easy transfer. I think the question spoke to publishing in different journals. I think that's a harder thing to shift into. And that maybe this isn't the information you wanted, but that might require doing a postdoc, reaching out. You got super great technical skills and, could be a really great fit for a postdoc for a faculty member who's in a business school. And that would allow you to kind of, rebrand yourself in business. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of good jobs in industrial engineering. So, not just thinking one or the other. I know when, again, 100 years ago when I was on the market, I applied to industrial engineering as well as business, and was, kind of pointed to who I applied to, but, thought about which of those schools would make sense for me. So I think sometimes there's like, oh, I want to go to business school. I think just thinking real deeply about how those cultures are different and what would be the best fit.
So I have a PhD in industrial engineering as well. So I transitioned to business school, but yeah, it's a good question. But a lot of engineering schools publish papers there that we publish in the business school. They publish in IIA Transactions, for example. That's a very well-respected journal. We publish, industrial engineers publish in those, Operations Research, MSOM. So there's a lot of very good industrial engineer faculty who publish in our journals, certainly from our department. So I have a question. I think it's very similar to the last one. Again, is it essential to go to conferences? Arvind already addressed that. I think it's advisable if you can, but if you can't, then at least let the institution know. Now, I can tell you that last year we invited 4 to campus. We met 3 of them at conferences, 1 we didn't. So that person was in Spain. So we flew somebody in from Spain. We met that person over Zoom, but not at a conference. So it's quite possible that institutions, if they think that they show great promise to be a colleague, it's quite possible that even if they don't meet you at a conference, they might invite you in. It depends on how well you do on a virtual interview. I want to talk about postdoc experience, though. Next, if you look at the next one, somebody has a 3 years postdoc experience and has 2 PhDs. Would that be an advantage or a disadvantage? Should we even mention that in our resume? Roshan, do you want to take that, Roshan?
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I think you should mention it. Be very honest on the resume, because people want to know what you have done. Especially having 2 PhD in different field could be a big platform from my personal understanding. When you did your first PhD, probably you don't know what you want to do. But when you do your second one, you know what you really, really want to do in the future. So I think it's a plus. Have a 3-year postdoc experience. I think it depends, and because it really depends on what you have done during the 3-year postdoc. Do remember you are 3 years more experienced than the rookie candidate. If you have done more impactful work, it's a big plus, and you are more prepared, you are more ready than rookie candidate. I think it really depends on what you have done. And people have different experience. Let's say, your PhD might be in a different field, and then you do a postdoc, and then you're looking for a job in the business school, like Karen just mentioned. I think it's possible. If you've done nice work, yeah, you have good future, I would say. And in addition to research, when you do the postdoc, like in my school, we don't have a PhD program. We have postdoc program. It's funded by the school for 2 years. We do ask our postdoc to teach 1 8-week course, especially for someone who didn't have any teaching experience in the business school environment. I think it's a good opportunity for them to build up the teaching experience to show the teaching effectiveness. I think it could be a good thing, depends on what you have done during the 3 years.
Arvind, something to add to that, Arvind? In
I
terms
mean,
of
like, yeah, I mean, like,
postdoc.
Yeah, so definitely if you have done 3 years of postdoc and 2 PhDs, I mean, like, yeah, you've learned a lot of life, I'll tell you. I mean, it's a lot of learning there. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to add other than, like, again, like, make sure your postdoc experience is very much aligned with what you wanted to do in the business school if you are seeking a business school job, or going back to Karen, like if you're seeking an IE job, like industrial engineering job. They're all good jobs here at the end of the day. So again, make sure there is focus in all these things. What we want to focus on is, do you have focus in what you want to do? Because that's more important than I have a breadth of degrees. I think that speaks less than the focus idea there. Let me take the next one, Bala. I think the next one is about like the reputation of the
Yeah. Please do.
institution.
Please do.
Yeah, I mean, like I mean, like it's hard to say this, right? Like, if you would ask me, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, the institution carries a lot of what I call like knowledge that people in the other institutions would know. So clearly, like, if you were to ask me, if you have two candidates, one coming from an institution that has more reputation and the other not, the person who's coming from the more institution reputation tends to have certain things working for them, right? I mean, it's very obvious that's there. But that being said, again, like there are some instances, again, where your dissertation idea, your methods that you're bringing in, some of the things that we already discussed, if it's very unique, people are ready to like let go of that kind of a reputational thing. But I can tell you, like, all I can tell you is it's very challenging. It's not easy for you to come from a less known school and climb up and fight at the same area where there are other schools where people are coming in. So this is exactly where I would go back to Karen's point about a postdoc. This is exactly where I would tell you, like, okay, you get a PhD from a school that is not reputed well. I would honestly reach out to some schools that are well reputed and see if you can be a postdoc there for a year or two, and then get some experience there and work with that professor, work with that people, even teach a class or two, and then apply in the market. I think all of a sudden your resume looks different. So this is a good example where, again, a postdoc would come in handy to negate some of the things about the reputation from the school.
Thanks, Arvind. The next question, does the applicants from the United States receive any priority compared to applicants from other countries? You're currently studying at UBC. It's not far from here, right? The second question is, does journal reviewing and editorship matter? So Karen, do you want to take that up, Karen?
Sure. So, I mean, I would say that there is not, unlike, a lot of our MBA students who are trying to get jobs that are not US citizens and are running into some issues with that. I have never seen, I'm curious if others have, but I've never seen that come as an issue for faculty positions that, I think we're always looking for the best candidates. We're not, we work through the issues, the visa issues that might need to happen depending on where people are coming from. So I personally have never seen that be talked about at all as an issue. So I would say that's neutral. And then absolutely. I mean, if you've been doing reviews and even an editor as a PhD's program student, that's huge. I would definitely be including that on your resume that you've reviewed for these, journals. Hopefully you did a good job so that you know, there was probably an AE that you interacted with, and that would be somebody that knows you now and would probably be able to vouch for you if they have a position open at their school. So I mean, I would encourage PhD students have a lot going on. And so I know thinking about like, oh, I'm going to fit in time for reviewing, that doesn't always happen. But if you do have the opportunity, especially working with your advisor on doing a review and making sure that your name is attached to that review so that the AE knows that you were involved, I think that can be really beneficial. There's also, I mean, it's a big part of our job once you become a professor is reviewing and editing. And so getting a little taste of that early on, it takes time. It takes time away from your research, but I think getting a little taste of that early on can be very beneficial as well, because it's really important. It's important for our profession, and we want to have good reviewers out there. And I know as both a DE and an AE, I'll have to say it's often the assistant professors that are the hardest on authors. And I think, part of it is that, just understanding that role and what the review process is and what a good referee report is and such. That's all good things, I think, to learn at this stage. So I would definitely encourage that as something that could help you in terms of having a hook to some people at schools that know that you were involved in that.
Rukshan, anything to add to
Yeah, sure, of course.
applying from another country and having editorial board experiences?
From different countries, no concern at all. And over the years, my school invited candidates from US, Canada, Europe, Asia, all different countries. I think it really depends on what the candidates have done. And regarding the work visa in academia, it's never an issue here, different from industry.
It's
Yeah,
true
just to add to that, Bala.
Go ahead.
So today I actually signed 3 different documents for my school. I'm the senior associate dean here. 3 of them, 2 H-1B visas, 1 green card application. So again, it's very common. If you think about it, this is what we do. Again, a lot of schools, I can echo what Karen and Regina is saying. We are open for the best talent, and the best talent need not always come from one country, right? I mean, the best talent is all over the world. And most of the schools are very much open. Like, I'm an immigrant myself, right? Like, so very open. So don't worry about that as a problem. Definitely do this. And again, reviewers, I really think, like, again, if you're able to review a lot, that's great for you, because again, that adds a lot of experience for you to see how to write a paper also. So you just wanted to give you that example. I just signed one, so I just thought I'll tell you that it's very common for universities to sponsor H-1Bs and even apply for permanent residency, which is what is green card for really their assistant professors and all. So it's very common.
Yeah, to add that at Texas A&M also, we simply don't care. We have brought candidates from Singapore, Hong Kong, India. As Arvind said, schools look for the best fit. Some proven track record in terms of scholarship and the promise of scholarship. So I really don't think good schools really care about what part of the world you're in, as long as they know that you're going to add value to the institution. And Arvind, is same here, Texas A&M, we sponsor all the time. Sponsoring PhDs is relatively easier than sponsoring somebody at the master's level. Immigration is more gentle to somebody with PhD and the research record. So we do that all the time. In fact, we brought someone from Singapore, and he got green card here. So that should be non-issue. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we're always looking for good reviewers, right? In fact, we're actually giving stuff to our graduate students so they can be trained, right? Every time, all of us as senior editors or department editors, some good graduate students, they do a very, very good job. I think you take advantage of that opportunity. That will look good, that you're engaged with the profession. That is always a plus, as opposed to just sitting in a corner and doing your own thing. So this is another question here. Again, the postdoc issue that's come up again, the tenure. We talk about it, and is there a stigma attached to postdoc issue? Stigma attached to, in terms of, you fail to get a tenure track position somewhere else, so this is not, I don't believe so. Again, for the same reason, I just simply don't think so. I think if the dossier looks good, I don't think people are going to pay much attention to, whether you found your job first time or the second time. But I want to hear from our colleagues here. Rukshan, do you want to go first, Rukshan?
Yeah, sure, of course.
You just told us about the postdoc at Johns Hopkins, so you get one more chance here.
Yeah, sure, of course. I'll be very brief. We all receive many applications with a different background, different experiences. But when we do the selection, we don't compare, seasoned candidate with a rookie candidate. We understand people change job for different reasons, for family, for location, for whatever. And we compare the rookie candidate with other rookie candidate. We compare postdoc with the postdoc. We compare assistant professor with the 4-5 years experience with the candidate with a similar experience. I think it really depends on what you are doing and what you have done and your potential. And I think here probably we can put this a little bit behind us, focus on our work and focus on our future. Do convince the schools, you are a good fit for them. You have done high quality work and your current work have very good potential. You can contribute more in the future in terms of research, teaching, and services.
Thanks, Ocean. So I have a couple of, I gathered questions from, PhDs over the years. So I have a repository of questions to ask. I have a question about research and teaching statements. Typically many schools request research, and so give us a sense of how best to put that together. What should go in there? What would be a good strategy? Length should be concise, should be more detailed, and I'm going to go, Arvind, if you want to take that one first. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like those are two very important documents for you. So I can tell you, like being in the search committee, I'll definitely look for your CV, your research statement, and your teaching statement. So again, pay more attention to those three documents. Let me talk a little bit about research statement and then teaching statement. So the research statement should communicate to anybody reading it about like who you are. And again, in terms of what kind of work you're doing and then why it's an important work, and is there any coherent argument and coherent focus on that work. So make sure, again, as you think about your research statement, not just to say, here is my paper 1, here is my paper 2, here is my paper 3, and here is my other project. I mean, like that's what I would say is a very regular research statement. So we all read that and we say, okay, yeah, I can read your abstract and I can get that. I would actually put some more thought into it to say, okay, what made you start this research stream? And be honest about it. Like, yeah, I was intrigued. I think several of you said you've worked somewhere. Okay, maybe you've seen a problem when you're working, and then that made you think about this as a problem that you want to research. So have some conversation about what made you think about this. Have some discussions about like how you're using, again, Karen talked about the use of multiple methods. If you're using multiple methods, talk a little bit about how you're actually helping to answer these research questions by the methods. If there is anything that you have done where you've communicated some of the research findings to like practice, like I've done, like when I did my PhD, again, a lot of times I ended up like not just talking to companies, but presenting there to talk about what I found, right? Like those kind of things is very important. So not rather than just saying paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and here are my 2 working papers, that's like very mundane. I would say put some really heart and soul into the research statement. So the story around why it's important, what made you think about this. What that tells me is then when I read that such a document, then it tells me, man, you are passionate about your research. I would always think about like when somebody starts their PhD, I would say think about a 15-year cycle, like 15 years. So when you start your PhD, like to the 5 years where you graduate, and then 10 more years after that, because you'll be an assistant professor for 5 years, and then hopefully a associate after that, and then full, right? Like, so do you have passion to tell me those 15 years of story? That's what you should think about in your research statement. On your teaching statement, let me be very brief on that. Again, people do look at it. And then like, and what I want you to think about is like, are there any things that you do in the classroom that are very unique for yourself, right? Like, again, that kind of philosophy should be there. Yes, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to use different methods, simulation. I'm going to bring speakers. Yeah, that's all good. But are there anything that's driving your thing? Like, for instance, are there any philosophy in your teaching? Like sometimes I say, like, I'm a believer in teaching is not about teaching, but learning, teaching others, right? Or teaching is about learning by doing. Are there anything that you have uniquely in your own way of doing these kind of teaching? Are there anything that's unique to you? I would put that also. In addition to, obviously, you'll talk in your teaching statement what classes you have taught and all the wonderful things you have learned there. But the philosophy around teaching, I would spend a little bit of time on that in your teaching statement. So yeah, I mean, those are some pointers. I'm curious to see what Karen and Ruzion have to say.
Karen, you would add anything, Karen?
Yeah, so I think that was awesome. So very well laid out. I guess I'll just sprinkle a couple things. So one is, I mean, these statements are an opportunity for your personality to come out. You know, your CV is somewhat, you know, I mean, you can make it a little jazzy here or there, but it's bullet points, right? I mean, this is a place where you're going to be speaking in prose, and people will hopefully, after reading these, feel a little bit like they know you, right? So I think taking all of that great content that Arvid just laid out for you, I would just say, make sure that like after reading that, someone would say like, yeah, that I can tell that you wrote this. This is showing, this is authentic to who you are. So, you know, your personality and your passion should be coming out. I should, you know, want to learn more about you because of reading this. So, not just be impressed by all the stuff you did, but really get a little bit more into yourself, revealing, you know, your personality. I think I would emphasize that part as well. And I think with that also writing quality is important too. So that's another, you know, thing that people are scanning. Is a person that can, you know, write well and so on. Mhm.
Ruxan, teaching research statement, what would it look like for you?
Yeah, of course. In addition to what you have done in terms of research and teaching, I think in the statement, you have a good opportunity to show what you want to do in the future. It can be more than your work in progress for research project, or you want to do something big, something more impactful in the future. You can discuss this in detail in the research statement. Another thing I think about teaching, because now the business school teaching is very different from before in terms of topics and also the format. I think here you can show your teaching capability and the courses you want to, you are willing to teach in the future, or you want to develop a brand new course at your future school. I think some school may be looking for that because you might school the deans always encourage us try to develop some new elective courses for our master and MBA students.
I have one last question. Actually, this is kind of a process question. Often, our PhD students apply and then they wait. I mean, process takes a long time. I mean, you put on Interfolio, a lot of applications. Is it okay to reach out to the schools even before they invite you for an interview? I mean, would that be considered a nuisance? Some students often ask you, what is the status of my application? I applied in August and this is November. Is there a possibility that you might irritate somebody that if you often contact them and ask for, what are your thoughts on that? I'm going to start with Karen. Karen? Etiquette, application etiquette.
Yeah. So I think that having a reason for reaching out is always better than just like, hey, what's going on with my application? So I would say if you have something, like your paper just got a major revision, or, you now know when you're going to present it in forms. I would encourage, I guess this is what I would say to my students. I would encourage them to have a reason to reach out. I know you have this application, wanted to also let you know. that I'm now, going to be presenting at these times at Informs, or, wanted to let you know if here's my new CV, I've now, this paper got accepted. Something like that, I think would be welcomed because it's like, there's a reason. I'm not a big fan of just constant, like, what's going on with my process. Now it's different once you've had some connection with that university, and then you do, have sort of a timeline started with them. So that would be different. But I guess that would be I think we'll all have maybe different feelings about this, but that would be my advice, to not reach out just randomly, but have some value add in the thing that you're telling them if you're reaching out before you have established a relationship.
Arvind?
I completely agree. I have nothing else to say. She's spot on.
The reason I asked was, we have done this often. We get emails from candidates. We haven't even done the process yet. We are still going through the process. We encourage exactly what Karen said. We encourage our PhD students, don't contact unless you really have a good reason to, right? Precisely, you have an interview somewhere, you already job offer somewhere, that's different. They're saying that, hey, look, I interviewed, I have a job offer, I'm interested in your institution, where are we in terms of that? So I can get some sense of, the timeline on that. So I don't have any more questions. What I would like to do.
There is one there, Bala. There is one question.
Did we not go? Which one is that?
Yeah, this is about I can handle.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So this is, again, the student is asking again, what happens if he has or she has an unsatisfactory market? Would it be better for a PhD student to do a postdoc for years or to take an assistant professor job? Again, this is personal question. I would say, we can offer a lot of advice, but this, again, depends on your personal situation, your family situation and all. Again, as you can imagine, taking an assistant professor, even in a tier 2 or a tier 3 school, is more lucrative than being a postdoc somewhere. So again, I'll be very cautious when I answer this to say, again, it depends on the individual. It depends on what it is. I have seen examples in my own colleagues that have gone through both the paths and have a very successful career after that. Actually, I've known colleagues who had not a good PhD year. They ended up having a postdoc in a different school, or even in the same school, doing a little bit different things, teaching more, and then going out in the market and being very successful. I've also seen the assistant professor route, where people have gone somewhere and really worked hard and then moved on to a different school. I've seen that also. So again, it's very personal, but I can only tell you that if you're taking the assistant professor route to a different lower tier school, your teaching might go more. So what will happen is, if you go to a research 1 school, typically the teaching load is about 3 classes or so. And so that gives more time to do research. But if you go to a lower tier school, maybe that's not 3 classes, that might be 4 or 5 classes, which might, again, create additional constraints for you to do research. So that's one consideration that you might want to think about if you take the assistant professor route to a different school. But there is nothing wrong with that. But it's personal. It's your individual family situation. So it's not right to say do one versus the other, but trade-off. Evaluate the pros and cons of doing that.
Thank you, Arvind.
Yeah, I have a quick comment on that. For like Arvind just said, for whatever reason you end up with a job that is different from what you expected. Once you decide to take it, try to like it, work hard. Do a good work in terms of teaching, research, and services. I would say, hard work eventually will be paid off.
So we are coming up, we don't have any more questions, but I would like to give the panel a few minutes to give your final thoughts, some words of wisdom, advice, our young colleagues here. So whatever you have to tell them is kind of open. We'll start with Karen. Karen, what are the final thoughts, your advice to our young colleagues?
So I guess first I would say that when you're, we talked a lot about process and getting ready, your materials, how to react to the offers that come in. We haven't said as much about like, who are you gonna apply to? And I guess maybe just to say a few things about that. So I know, again, this is probably differences of opinion across the panel, but I think I would say, think about where you really would go. Because I find sometimes that people apply, why not? Let's apply to 120 schools. But then you may actually get interviews and get, work to do around those schools. And so if there are some where, and the constraints may not be the ranking of the school, but it may be location. There may be some other things that are really in your consideration set. I would just be true to yourself in not be over constrained, certainly. So, but not to apply to schools that there's no way that you would go to. Because I do find sometimes students that overextend and then start, getting into situations where they're doing flyouts and they're not passionate about the school. And I think that's hard. So this is a little tricky, right? Because you don't want to be, again, too constrained, but also want to be confident that if you did get an offer, if that was the only school you got an offer for, you would be, wanting to go there. So I think I would just think about that a little bit, this set of schools that you apply to. And then I'd go back to what I said maybe at the very beginning, this idea of like, make it easy for others to advocate for you. So that goes into like, you should have a brand, you should have a clear statement, they say like your elevator speech of who you are. That means what kind of research you're doing, what kind of methodology you have, how this fits into your teaching, something that's packaged and is portable so others can speak to it and others can remember it. Because many committees are interviewing lots and lots of people, and they're certainly meeting lots of people at conferences. And so the more that you can be memorable, not that, oh, this is a person that had these 3 papers that were in different areas, and now who was that again? But like this, I understand who this person is, and I have portable idea that I can then tell others about. So think about that, how you can kind of weave your brand or your tale or your elevator speech in a way that's authentic and that's, really speaks to your strengths. So that's what I got.
There you go. So thank you, Karen. Arvind, final thoughts?
Yeah. So again, I go what she says. Here's another thing, couple of things I always think about as you're preparing for your job market. Like I said, it's a two-way street. You're going to like also evaluate, okay, what you like, right, in those schools. So keep that in mind. It's not always, yes, one way, what you want to impress somebody. They should also impress you. Again, that's the job of the hiring committee, to impress you, to tell you more about what their schools are doing. So 3 important advices there for me. One thing is, definitely think about this as everybody's going to get a job. Okay, like it's something that we all worry about. Oh my God, am I going to get a job? Maybe it won't be the job that you wanted, but there is always a job for you. I think keep that in mind and look at this as a process. Look at this as a process, because you're going to like definitely learn. You're going to learn from a lot of other people. You're going to learn a lot about how things work, how other universities work, where they are. Don't confuse Ohio State to Oklahoma State. I mean, like I've had instances where people have come to me and said, okay, yeah, I love Oklahoma State. Again, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not there. It's a good school, I'm not there. So again, you learn a lot. Okay, so that's important. Think about that as a learning process, right? The 2 more advice, right? Develop a cope-up mechanism. Okay, it's going to be stressful. The next like 8 to 10 months, it's going to be stressful, right? Like, so I would develop a cope-up mechanism for you. Maybe it's like you going for a walk, or like maybe it's something where you want to talk to your significant other or friends. You've got to steam out a certain things, right? Like always develop that cope-up mechanism. And again, the cope-up mechanism advice I give to everybody, including assistant professors, even sometimes full senior professors, like We've all had moments where, again, something is not going well. You've got to stress out somewhere. Again, that's our life. So keep that in mind, especially when you're in the job market, right? Keep that in mind. That'll be my advice number two. So think about this as a learning process, develop a coping mechanism. And then the last thing I would say is enjoy this process. I mean, yeah, hopefully you won't have to do this again at this level. You can definitely do what Karen has done, like where people are reaching out to some professors and saying, come to and work to my university. That's a whole different thing. But hopefully this is not like you are doing it for one and the last time where you're applying for a school and enjoying. So enjoy that process, meet a lot of people, learn more about them. And again, there is always that curious mindset. So I'll keep that also. So enjoy, learn, and develop a coping process.
Thank you, Arukshan.
Right, of course. I will be very brief. I would say be well prepared, and have a good understanding about what I are doing. Every talk is a job talk. Conference presentation is a job talk. Even a personal conversation could be a part of the job talk. Try to do a good job. Have different version about your presentation. You can do a good job in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 30 minutes. And finally, I would say, job search is a long process. Many things could happen. Be positive. Keep fighting. Here or there, there's always a place for you.
So I thought of one more thing. You
Go ahead,
both
Karen,
have inspired me to remember that, that this is fun. It's the one time. It can be stressful. I think the other thing I would say, this process is such a unique time to really get to know a lot of people, right? So I think back, there's many people that I interact with now that I first was introduced to because I was in their office during my interview. And I didn't necessarily, get a job offer from that school, but there were a couple people during that interview process that I connected with. So think about, like, this is a unique opportunity to go and, learn about lots of schools, start understanding different faculty that might be people that you might want to partner with on research in the future. So I think of it as an exploration also of the field and of people, and you're also going to get to know each other, right? I think the PhD students that are kind of in the trenches together during this process bond pretty tightly. So I think use each other as well. So I think from that perspective, this is really a unique, fun time because you're really going to build your network during this year or couple of years if you're earlier in the process.
Thank you, Karen. So first of all, I want to thank our panel members here, all three of them, for their fantastic insights. Between them, there are so many years of recruiting faculty members. Thank you so much for spending your time. And also, from my side, I'll tell you, Arvind said this is going to be a stressful time in the next 8-9 months. Some in good way, some not, maybe not good way. But I think have a good perspective. Arukshan said keep positive and optimistic. I think that's really, really important that you present yourself in an optimistic, non-cynical person when during this process. And also, don't take things. Many schools are going to say no to you. That's given, right? Because I can tell you, when you have 180 applications, you get pick 4 people. That is not necessarily a reflection on your credentials. It's a reflection on maybe the school is looking for something else. So you will have many rejections, and unfortunately, we all did. But take that with a stride. Take that with understand that different schools recruit for different reasons. Every school is that way. Good luck to you. If you can help you in any way, you need further information, just shoot a note to us. We'll be happy to tell you whatever we know. Engage with POMS. POMS is a wonderful, wonderful organization. I'm so glad that I'm part of it. Many friends. The conferences are really, really fun. Sushil feeds you such wonderful food. That's the best food in the conferences. So thank you for all joining us. Thank you, Rakesh. Always you're indispensable when it comes to doing this stuff. Thank you so much, and thank you all. And we look forward to seeing you next month on the second session of this workshop. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, and thank you, Bala, for putting this together.
Yeah,
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very
Good luck,
much.
everyone.
thank you.
Thank you all.